Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to be talking about the construction system. And me making a video, it's a bit of rare. I don't usually make videos, I usually make those nice images that people seem to enjoy. But when I do make a video, it's because of one or two things. First thing is I don't have time to make one of those images, which I currently don't because I'm just too busy despite being on holiday. But anyway, never mind. The other reason is that it's something which, to be honest with you, I don't think an image will really do justice to. And while I could make a nice little forum post, I can't be bothered, and I hate the forums, and Reddit's formatting really bugs me, but never mind, enough of me whining. Now, me personally, I've got some high hopes for the construction system. I hope that, for starters, it gets the game onto the front page of gaming news sites, because that will get us new players in, it will get old players to return back to the game, and it will hopefully give the entire thing some more longevity. Now, with that said, it should also appeal for another kind of portion of gamers, rather than the Twitch kind of combat gamers that the game's been pushing for all these years, who crave this kind of individual progression with directives and the like. Hopefully with the construction system we'll get players that are more into perhaps RTS games, players that will hopefully sit behind the front lines, building these things ready for enemy pushes in, or maybe even using these as in kind of an offensive role, building these constructions to allow us to hold the ground that we take easier. Now, hopefully those players will then stick around with the game and again increase the game's longevity. Now sure, the developers could have been focusing on these past few months they've been spending on working on construction, on sorting out those little features that people like to complain about, which I've already mentioned some of. And yet, as I've already said, construction is a new system, it is a headline feature, it will make a difference, it will bring players to the game. And because of that, you're just not going to have the same effect if you, say, for example, remove maxes. Okay, I cannot imagine that you're going to get droves and droves of people coming back. You're certainly not going to get new players coming into the game simply because of a feature that was effectively removed. Okay, and I mean, that overall is why I think construction is a good thing for devs to be spending their time on. Now, a month or so ago I put together an image about the kind of things that I would like to see in the construction system beyond the kind of what we knew about at the time, which was basically the bunkers, the walls, the victory point generator and the turrets, and that was basically it. Now, since then we've seen a lot of bits and pieces being added to the system by the devs. I mean, we've seen the kind of the shield generators for the walls, for the bunkers, and that we've seen the dome shield emitter, which kind of covers up the base, and we've just seen Burness show us the combination of that and the drop grid emitter, which should be quite interesting. We've seen the Sundra garage just pop up as well. We've seen the silo for storing your Courtium, and we've seen a variety of other bits and pieces. Now, there's more besides that which I'd quite like to see. I mean, you can look at the image yourselves, but I mean, I included things like a radar array to give nearby aircraft and maybe even ground vehicles kind of engagement radar as kind of default. I mentioned a resupply tower, which seems like a logical next step to help out vehicles, a vehicle bay itself, which again it seems like a logical next step for the system. I also mentioned a lattice logic modulator, as I called it, which basically lets you make your own lattice links, as a guy called, I apologise, I'm going to mess this up, but Narash Razra, I don't know, suggested back on Reddit. Now, with all these kind of different bits and pieces, obviously there could be far more beyond that. There's a lot that could be done with the construction system. I mean, potentially we could see in the future, we could see the whole kind of the standard courtyard buildings being dropped in for people to use as kind of defensive points, and as I've mentioned in the past, getting things like actual cap points dropped in and making them kind of fightable over. But there's a lot that could potentially be done with this system, and I'm really pleased with the things the devs have already shown us in what I dread to say could be phase 1 of this construction system. Now, there are going to be drawbacks to this system. Any new system for the game will introduce bugs. I mean, it's just a fact of, well, software, isn't it? Which is okay, because there is got to be a risk and you get the reward because of that. The other problem, of course, is performance, but as the devs have shown us on the stress test, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. The no-deploy zones around bases will also help to reduce it, because there's going to be less space on the continents that will allow us to build on and therefore affect the performance of, and so that could potentially solve that issue. Now, beyond that, I mean, there are worries that people have, and valid concerns really, about aircraft and how much flak there's going to be because of these bases that could be set up anywhere. I mean, potentially you'd get and you will get groups setting up flak nests outside of warp gates, which will make for some interesting gameplay, because obviously you then need to go and counter them, but it could be problematic. But there are ways around it. You can pull from different areas of the continent, towers and bases and facilities and the like. And yes, there are issues, but on the whole, I think the benefits will outweigh any cons that there might be with this system. Now, with all the bits and pieces that we've got added, there's a lot for us to potentially use. But immediately after this construction system goes live, I'd like to see the devs really continue working on adding a few more bits and pieces to it. I've already mentioned things like a vehicle resupply station, a tower. I've also mentioned this vehicle bay. But there's other bits and pieces as well. I'd like to see potentially things like anti-drop pod devices, which you can then potentially shoot down incoming drop pods with, or it could just deny them the use of around the area. So you get one of these things set up, and then the enemies can't put down a spawn beacon, something like that, like an interference generator, which could then stop enemy Sunderers being deployed as well, potentially. You've got other things as well, like cloaking devices, which could cloak the area around the base. You've got various other bits and pieces you could add as well. You've got things like, well, if you think back to the Battlefield series of games, there's all the different kind of components that could mesh up with some kind of command interface. I mentioned a few bits and pieces the other day which people seem to like. Things like you could link it up with orbital strikes, EMP strikes. You could have drones being produced, which could of course have performance problems, I suppose. But you've got things like supply drops and all kinds of bits and pieces that could be dropped in because of equipment that people have constructed through this system. So I hope I've got across the point that I'm really pleased with the way this construction system is developing. I think it could be a really impressive feature for the game that gets people into it that are new to the game, and also keeps people playing it for longer. I'm also hoping that the player base really engages with it and goes to town with it and doesn't just ignore it. Because my fear would be that the devs have spent all this time putting this new system together, which has taken months, lots of time and energy, and people are going to just not bother. And I think that would be a real shame, because I think this has got a lot of potential to drive the game forwards and make it into something more appealing to the masses, and certainly a lot more interesting to play. So I mean, long term, if we really get people engaged with this new system, what we could see is we could have new continents being produced where the only facilities that are actually on there are the main facilities, the biolab, tech plant, amp station, maybe even interlink system, facility and dropship center, and in between there's not very much at all. Or perhaps there's just the individual like capture point nodes there, and the players can build their own bases around them, and those can be semi-permanent, so people can capture them and lose them, potentially destroy what the other empires have put there, potentially not. We could see empire-specific buildings. So, I don't know, just musing off the top of my head here, you could have the Terrans having some kind of barracks, or the NC having some kind of ammunition stockpile, and the VS having some kind of weird alien technology that, I don't know, makes spandex, who knows. But we could also see outfit constructions, which give the whole outfit perks, and the enemy empires can come in and knock them out and scalp the outfits, if you will. We could see all kinds of bits and pieces. But overall, what I'd like to see is I'd like to see this kind of being a major component of the game, because it could be fantastic. Anyway, that's really all I've got to say, ladies and gentlemen. So, well, thank you for watching. If you've got anything to say, positive or negative, please do so.